Hello, I'm Kiran and welcome to my woodworking channel. If you want to know how I built this mid-century modern inspired chair, stay tuned. As I often do with large builds, I started by creating templates for the armrest and the legs. These templates take the angle calculations out of the equation, so it makes it very straightforward to create complex joinery angles. And that's how the legs and the armrest join. I cut a big 5/4 walnut rough board that I had into smaller manageable sizes and surfaced them on the planer, the jointer, and the table saw. Once the pieces were surfaced, I transferred the templates onto the work pieces and then cut them out on the bandsaw, making sure I stayed outside the marked lines. All the parts are cut out here and ready to be routed to be true. On the router table, I first started with the pattern bit and then trued it up with a flush trim bit. I'm using the double-sided tape here to hold the templates onto the workpiece to run them through the pattern bit. After the pieces were routed, I put them on the table and marked the locations for the dominos and cut them out. Then I turned my attention to the seat frame and the backrest. I'm using a bulky 6/4 walnut for the backrest, so I first jointed it using the track saw and then surfaced it with the jointer, planer, and the table saw. Then I installed 1/4-inch dado stack on my table saw and cut out a notch where the seat will sit recessed in the seat frame. Here is a closer look with the dado cut. I'm choosing the miter joinery to not show any end grain on the seat frame, so I set the table at 45 degrees and cut out all 4 pieces. I added dominos here again to strengthen the miter joinery. Quick dry assembly and then I glued it up. The backrest and the armrest join at weird angles, Instead of measuring these angles, I'm simply using the backrest as a reference and mark both armrests to that angle. Then I drew up the backrest using the crosscut sled by making 2 passes. For the 2 armrests, I simply set the miter saw at that angle and cut them out together. This is the trickiest joinery in the whole project because the domino needs to be more inset in the backrest and then in the armrest, and also it joins at a mitered beveled angle. It's best to be patient and double check your every step when you're doing this kind of joinery. A quick dry fit to make sure that I cut everything accurately, and then I rounded over all the parts. That was exhausting. What you probably will see in 10 seconds took me over an hour and a half to round over all the legs, the seat frame, the cross supports, so on and so forth. As if it wasn't punishment enough, I had to do one more step before I can actually glue this up, that is to sand. Since these are fairly smooth from the planer, I've decided to skip 120 grits and then directly start with 180 grits because this is very smooth. I sanded the parts with a 5-inch random orbit sander and hand sanded where the sander couldn't reach, like the curved parts. Then onto the glue up. Because I don't have a lot of clamps, I'm doing this in stages. First, I'm gluing up the legs to the armrests, and once they're done, I'm gonna complete the assembly. During sanding, I had removed the original blue tape markers and had put replacements, but turns out that I hadn't put them in the right place. So I initially ended up aligning the pieces, the leg and the armrest, incorrectly. Then I realized I was able to pull it out and realign the domino and glue it back together. But it was very stressful. I cut out a piece of plywood to perfectly fit in the inset of the seat frame. This is where the upholstery will sit. Then adding more dominoes to attach the seat frame to the legs. I cut out the legs to be perfectly parallel to the ground. A track saw makes this marking and hand cutting process a very simple step. Then it's time for the final glue up. It took pretty much all the big clamps that I owned to glue this up. Then I flush cut the excess dominoes using a Japanese handsaw. There were some minor knot holes in the lumber, so I just filled them with epoxy. Final sanding and clean up with mineral spirits. And then I added my stamp to this chair. Then on to applying the finish. I'm using equal parts polyurethane, boiled linseed oil, and mineral spirits. It's nicely thinned down so I can easily apply with a piece of rag, and I applied a total of 3 coats. I've decided to do the upholstery for the chair myself. I have this piece of foam that I have remaining from a previous project. I'm not an expert upholsterer, if that's the word, but I decided to approach upholstery like I approach everything else. What could go wrong? Which has burnt me numerous times in the past. Let's see if it's the same or I can flip the story. Another thing with upholstery that I learned, that best tool to do upholstery is not a tool in your shop at all. It's a tool in your kitchen. So if you have one of these electric carving knives, it's the best and the easiest way to cut the foam to the exact size. And also if you want to shape the foam a little bit, this is going to come in really handy. So that's next. First I cut the foam slightly oversized and used the light adhesive to stick it to the plywood sheet. Then I cut off the excess and added a chamfer. I don't know if this is necessary, but I thought it looked nice. More spray adhesive, and then I added the batting. By this time you should have gotten sufficiently high by sniffing all the glue, so this becomes a very pleasant experience. Staple gun to secure the batting to the plywood sheet, and then finally I added the upholstery cloth to the upholstered cushion. Looking at the form factor, this cushion is probably a little thick for the size of the chair. Probably an inch cushion would have been enough. This is, I think, nearly 3 inches. Maybe I'll replace this with an inch thick cushion in the future. Hindsight 2020, I guess. Well, 2020 has been so crappy with COVID, even the optometrists are not claiming it. And that completes the build. Thank you for watching that video. If you like this video, please go ahead and hit that thumbs up button and leave any questions or comments that you have in the comment section below. One of the main inspirations for building this chair is Jory Brigham's The Hang Chair, and a picture of another chair that I saw in an online group. If you want to watch more of shop improvement projects, project build videos, and tool reviews, please consider subscribing to my channel. See you on the next one.